So we are live, and good morning, and welcome to a special joint council meeting with the Nampa Development Corporation and the Nampa City Council. And for the Nampa Development Corporation, we do have a tradition on city council meetings that we open in prayer and a pledge, and I've asked Wendy Rhodes, our chair of NDC, to open us in prayer, and then we'll do the pledge and dig into our meeting.
Good morning. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we just thank you, Lord, for this opportunity that we have to come together and talk about the issues, Lord, and the things that concern our city. And Lord, I just ask that you would bless this meeting, that you would bring us together, help us to be open-minded, help us to be thoughtful of those that we're serving, Lord. And I just ask that you would be glorified through it. Be with our mayor and the decisions that are made daily. I just ask that you would be with our council and help them, Lord, and give them wisdom. And I just thank you, Lord, for just blessing us as a whole. It's a privilege to live here, Lord, and to know that we can open in prayer, Lord, is an honor. In your precious, I ask these things, Lord, in your precious holy name. Amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Wendy. Okay, we're going to begin with roll call, and are you going to start with council? Okay.
Rodriguez. Here. Bruner.
Here.
Jangula.
Here.
Reynolds.
Here.
Haverfield.
Here.
Bauer.
Here.
Cornelius. Here. Dina. Rhodes. Here. Hutchings. Lee.
Here.
Okay, thank you. So as we step into our meeting, I just want to say thank you. This is the first time that we've come together as a body with NDC and the City Council, and I appreciate this opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity. As we've discussed, the reason we're here today is that we've got about 7 years, approximately, left in our urban renewal district. And as we look to seeing that sunset down the road a ways, it's a great opportunity for us to collaborate and talk together about our priorities. So I appreciate the work. Amber, thank you for your work in helping us get this together. Robin, thank you. And Krista, and just the whole team, thank you for your work over there. And Robin, thank you for your leadership in pulling it together. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Robin, and they've got the agenda, and here we go.
So we're glad to have you all here together today. Just like the mayor said, we're looking forward to talking about urban renewal today. I'm just going to go through the agenda briefly, what we'll be reviewing. So we'll be talking about the Nampa's urban renewal history, our current financial status, what the bonds are, what our expense obligations are with NDC. And then also we'll look at the projected cash flow, what it looks like through the end of the district, which expires December of 2030. Then we'll have Tom Points, our Public Works Director, come up, and he will look at or run us through the public works projects that are happening in and around the urban renewal geographic district. And then we'll talk about the proposed projects that the Nampa Development Corporation is considering supporting in the next 7 years, as well as looking at how a new urban renewal district could work around Highway 20 and 16. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Cliff for the urban renewal overview.
Cliff, as you come, I just want to say thank you. One wonderful thing is that you've got great institutional knowledge, and it is so beneficial that you've got that knowledge as you come in, so thank you.
That's a nice way of saying I'm old. But
No,
thank you.
that's not the intent.
Thank you, Mayor. Much appreciated. Cliff Long, Senior Director of Development Services. I thought today we'd just walk through very quickly and learn a little bit more about urban renewal as a tool, why we use it, and what we've done with it here in Nampa. So what is urban renewal? Well, urban renewal is probably the best economic development finance tool that we have here in the state. If it's done correctly, it really allows growth to pay for growth. There exists within the city, as a creation of the mayor and council, an urban renewal agency. And that agency is called the Nampa Development Corporation. They have a series of powers that are granted to them under Idaho state law, including the list that is there before you. But very quickly, they can construct and reconstruct a variety of projects and infrastructure. They can acquire property and dispose of property. They can improve, renovate, clear, and prepare for redevelopment properties or buildings. And they can basically eliminate any blighted areas within the community. And in order to do so, they have the power to invest and to borrow money and to issue bonds and accept loans or grants. So how does urban renewal financing work? Well, first of all, it's really important to understand that urban renewal areas are not taxing districts. They do not affect taxpayers negatively, and they do not create additional taxes. Urban renewal works to leverage the funds received by essentially setting aside a portion of the property tax that's generated within the area. So when a new area is created, we call it a revenue allocation area. The value of the properties within the district are assessed and documented. So if you have an area that's worth $100 and you have a series of taxing districts like the city or the county, mosquito abatement, whoever, when the urban renewal plan starts, they will always get what they got on that original $100 investment. But they agree at the front end to partner and to allow the growth within that district to be set aside as what we call the increment that creates revenue for the agency to use. So it can be used to issue revenue anticipation bonds. For example, we know that the district is going to grow based on the revenues that are anticipated. You can issue bonds. That happened for the public safety building and for the library. It can also be site-specific. So you can have a company come to town, and as an incentive, if they locate within the urban renewal area, essentially you can rebate a portion of their own taxes back to them based on the new value that they create and add to the district. So again, this slide is a little confusing, but it really gets at what I was talking about before. The base is frozen in our case that we're going to be talking about today from this big plan that's in front of you. That happened in 2006. And then the increment that grows within there is what's available to fund projects during the life of the district and When that revenue allocation area expires, all that goes back on the books, all that value, and all the taxing districts who patiently partnered with us for the duration get that as essentially a windfall at the end. Ooh, that's kind of wild. But here's an example. So I just wanted to make it clear that, again, the Urban Renewal Agency is not a taxing district, and it doesn't add additional taxes. Here is a real-life example that was done with a property that's within our district and a property on the outside. And you can see the all of the components of the levy on both sides. Urban renewal does not add anything or increase that in any way. The levy rate is exactly the same whether you're in the district or outside of the district. So let's talk a little bit about Nampa's history with urban renewal. Our first foray into urban renewal happened in 1994 with the North Nampa Urban Renewal Agency. And it was a 10-year plan, and during the life of that plan, it funded projects like the Idaho Center, the Boys and Girls Club, Stampede Park, put money in the airport expansion, and a number of other things. Our second urban renewal area happened in 2006, and that's the one that's outlined in here. And at that time, when we adopted that, because North Nampa Urban Renewal Agency was kind of a mouthful, we just renamed the corporation to the Nampa Development Corporation at the time. And then in 2012, we actually started our next revenue allocation area, and that is a site-specific one-block area around the old Mercy Hospital. And basically, that was done in order to pay for the infrastructure necessary to convert that old hospital site into the housing project that's there today. This is the original area for the North Nampa. And you can see it was a pretty big section of the community, but this is the one that built the Idaho Center and all of that work, including the preparation of some of the infrastructure and things that have made CWI possible. All the car dealerships and all the businesses out there benefit from the infrastructure that was put in as a result of that plan. When that plan was started, the total property value of that big chunk of land that I showed you was $72 million. After 10 years, the total property value in that area grew to $612,000, or $12 million. And so there was a $540 million increase in the valuation of the district. A lot of that based on the infrastructure that was put in place to make it happen. And in the bottom, you can just see the revenue growth associated with that too. The districts that make up the individual parcels within that initial taxing district together, when it was put in place in '94, got $939,000. And by the time the district sunset 10 years later, those districts were now able to collect $9.7 million. So this is our current urban renewal plan, and it's the one that's outlined on the plan before you here. And people often ask, why is it shaped the way it's shaped? And it was shaped that way in order to accomplish projects. And we'll talk about the 6 original projects envisioned here in a minute. The Central Library, North Nampa Industrial Infrastructure, the police station, all those projects were in the plan and have essentially all been completed. We're still putting pipes in the ground for North Nampa, but that investment and plan has come together. Nampa Caldwell Boulevard improvements, money was set aside in the plan to be able to do enhanced streetscape and things along Nampa Caldwell Boulevard, because that's simply never happened. When the sidewalks went in the mid-'90s and finally connected all of the boulevard with sidewalk, there wasn't enough funding in there to do street lights or trees or any of the other amenities. And so we put funds in there that could make that possible if that was something that the city pursued in the future. Right now, we've got a piece of that underway, and that's with District 208, which is the former Karcher Mall. And they have an agreement with the agency for tax increment. And part of what we get out of the deal is they have to redo the frontage all along Nampa Caldwell Boulevard in front of that property. There was money put in place for Franklin Boulevard right-of-way improvements. Franklin is the closest interstate exchange to downtown, and it's the least utilized. It still, to this day, does not have connected sidewalks. You can't walk from downtown to North Nampa on Franklin Boulevard. Also, when Garrity was improved back in the late 2000s, there wasn't enough money to finish the enhancements that went in on Garrity. So if you ever get out and look from the railroad tracks about Sugar Street and head towards the interstate, there's a couple of block section on either side that still has power poles square in the middle of the sidewalk and no trees, no amenities at all. It was just a case of simply running out of money and not being able to finish it. So money was set aside in the plan in case the city wanted to go back and do that. And then finally, the sixth initial project contemplated in the plan was to do interchange improvements at Karcher and at Franklin. Karcher was brand new when we put this plan together, and it was, when it first went in, several of you will remember that it did have landscaping, but it's been rebuilt several times now, and none of that exists today, and it's getting ready for additional construction for the next few years. So, and then Franklin was rebuilt, and no landscaping was put on Franklin, and so Franklin kind of isn't as shiny as it should be even today. But here's an example of some of the projects that we funded from the 2006 plan. Obviously, the library, the one that's in the middle here says CSHQA. Those are the apartments at District 208, the old Karcher Mall. Many people don't know, but NDC funded the initial infrastructure to make St. Luke's possible. When St. Luke's came to town, that was a privately owned facility, and we did an agreement with them to rebate funds to pay for the stoplight right in front of St. Luke's. And we were smart enough to say that if it ever became non-taxable, that had to be paid off. And when St. Luke's, a non-taxable entity, actually purchased that from the original developer, they paid off those funds. In the bottom left corner there, that is the Mercy Hospital project there, and obviously the police station. And then this is a site plan of the new Adler Industrial Park that's going in North Nampa that we funded significant infrastructure to make happen. So when we started that plan, it was worth about $293 million was the base that we froze. And so far, and this isn't at the end of the district, this is just to date so far, it's increased in value by almost $1 billion. And you can see that the property tax that we receive now is right around $5 million on an annual basis from that plan. So what's next for Nampa? Certainly if we go back and we think about the powers that are available to the Development Corporation, the corporation has the ability to do those projects that I mentioned, or they can start over with new projects. They can do land redevelopment, create incentives, but we've only got, as the mayor indicated, 7 or 8 years left for income coming into the tax allocation area. And I draw special attention to page 6 of the spiral bound plan for you in front, which kind of outlines several of the overall goals of what was initially envisioned the money would be spent on in the plan. And with that, I'm going to turn it back to Robin.
The recent changes at the state level with the urban renewal approach. I mean, there's more limitations than maybe hasn't been mentioned yet that we have to look at as far as moving down the road as well, as far as what we can and cannot do with the dollars in the urban renewal agency.
Commissioner Haverfield, we do not have that planned as part of the discussion today. We can, on our regularly scheduled meeting in February, we can talk through some of those with the Development Commission.
All right, thank you.
All right, so as Cliff mentioned, NDC, I'm going to go through the financial picture where we're at right now with our current revenue allocation area. We receive our revenue from Canyon County property tax payments and also from the parking garage revenue. We're looking at just over 4.3 million to receive from property taxes this year. NDC has two bonds that bond obligations, the Series 2020A and Series 2020B. Those were refinanced in February of 2020 on my birthday. So what a present. But what it did give Nampa was it saved $4.8 million by refinancing. And so the Nampa Development Commission refinanced to be able to have that savings. And so you can see the interest rates on both of the bonds in this table as well. And importantly to note is that the 2020 Series B is scheduled to be paid off in 2026, and then the 2020A will be paid off in 28. So that's our two bond obligations that we have remaining, and you can see the amounts that we have remaining to pay. So just over 7 million and then over 5 million on both of those. And those two bonds were for the public safety building as well as the library, or Library Square, I should say. Our current obligations, you can see, these are our current projects that we have going with NDC that they've approved, and then also our other obligations. So the North Nampa infrastructure, this is the project that puts the water and sewer out in North Nampa near Adler, LDK's property, and River Range property in North Nampa, allowing for the development of that area. It's about a mile stretch of infrastructure that is quite expensive because I had to go 30 feet down into the ground. But all of those projects are on track. We have the construction completing on the infrastructure in March of this year. So they're moving forward, and the Stowe Company, as many of you guys have heard, is locating there, and they are on schedule to open in September of 2023 this year, and that project would not have happened without that infrastructure going in. Adler Industrial will receive a TIF agreement, tax increment financing reimbursement agreement, of just over 10 million for that infrastructure that's going in. So they'll be reimbursed as the increment increase for the maximum of $10,436,062. And then we have an agreement with District 208, who has redeveloped Karcher Mall. And I think most of you have probably been out there to see it. The apartments are on schedule to be completed this summer. And the redevelopment of the retail has also been happening, and they are working on those tenant improvements for Boot Barn, and I'm not remembering all the tenants, but they have several new tenants that are going in, and they developed a new pad out front in front of Karcher, in front of District 208. And then we have our NDC bonds, as I've covered, and then Cliff covered as well, our Mercy Creek Limited Partnership. That is the reimbursement that goes to that development. And then just recently, the Nampa Development Corporation is helping to support the rehabilitation of the Dewey mural that's on Levitz Engineering downtown. And so we have a grant from the Kevin and Mary Daniels Fund of $10,000, and then NDC is helping to match a portion of that, and then First Interstate Bank is matching the other portion. So we can have that Nampa, or the Dewey mural rehabilitated. Then we have our Sidewalk Incentive Fund. So this is the one incentive that we have that's an economic development incentive. The Sidewalk Incentive Fund is to help when developers are coming downtown. If they've spent over $1 million in development, NDC will help the developer to do the streetscape plan, to install the streetscape plan up to $100,000. And we've utilized that, we'll be utilizing that. You'll see the construction and the redevelopment where Boise Fry is on the corner of 3rd and 12th. So that corner is going to get redone, which is exciting because that corner's very scary when you can pull in and out of there. So we'll be redoing that and making it safer. And then we have our downtown sculpture, which I think most of you have heard of. This is our Nampa sculpture that's going to have Nampa culture words that are inside of it that will be located at Lloyd Square. It's going to be brick red, and it is about 6 feet tall, and it will be very selfie worthy. A great thing for families to go take pictures with in Lloyd Square. And that construction will happen starting this spring and then continue through the summer. And then we have our downtown sidewalk design plan. So we'll talk more about this. I will talk more about this, but NDC has currently authorized $150,000 to be able to start the design work for our downtown sidewalks. Many of our council people did the ADA in the wheelchairs trying to get around downtown, and I was with Councilman Bauer, and it was tough. He was a little bit better than I, but it's tough to get around downtown with our ADA compliance, and then also needing to, we'll upgrade to our streetscape plan that we have, and put the trees in, put our benches in, put those things, lighting in, with that project. So that is the first portion of the design plan that NDC has authorized that for. And then last but not least, as Valley View School District, we do a tax rebate to Valley View, and that portion is calculated by the county, and we send those taxing funds back to Valley View as we receive checks from the county. All right, this is really small, but this is our cash flow for 2023. As you can see in the large box up at the top, one of our bigger projects is with Adler paying the $3 million for the infrastructure will happen this year. And so we will end this year with just over $3 million, with meeting all of our bond obligations, all of our expenses, and including a project line item at just over $1 million to be able to do some projects. So here's some projections. We did projections of no growth, which we know is not happening. We can already see the increment coming in on Adler, but this is the most conservative picture that you can see. Then we did 2% growth and then 5% growth through the life of the district. So going through FY31, because taxes are paid in arrears, so we'll receive funding through 2031. So with zero growth, we would end with $4.7 million. And then if we look at 2% growth, and I'm going to caveat this is with a line item in a budget every year with $1.15 million built into it. We have done that in the past to be able to get done some projects like our downtown projects and all the projects that Cliff has outlined that you saw pictures of. So with 5% growth, we would be at $22.7 million. And then if we do not have any budgeted projects, that next table down, we would end with no growth at almost $24 million. And then with 5% growth is $32 million. So,
Excuse me, Robin, can I ask a question?
yes, of course.
Okay. In looking at the overall projects that the NDC does, it seems to me that the growth and development is a major issue, major objective. So, and I don't know the answer to this, so I'm going to ask it anyway. Is there a way that NDC could, or are they within bounds of their limitations, that is, to utilize and fix the off and on ramps coming into Nampa? Because they look terrible. And if you look at Boise Meridian, they look really nice. Even Caldwell looks nice. So is that available? Is that something that fits within our purview here?
Yes. So, Councilman Rodriguez, that is a definite possibility. Where Cliff showed the map, we can improve that Franklin Boulevard interchange, that interchange, as well as the Karcher. So those are within our urban renewal boundaries, and that specifically is one of the projects that was outlined in the plan for Franklin, is to make it look a lot nicer. And I agree with you that it would be fantastic to have one of our interchanges at least look really good. You're welcome.
Robin, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
So the levy rate that you applied to your projections,
Yes.
because we've had a changing levy rate, right? And it's gone down, assessed values have gone back up. How did you calculate this? Did you just use our existing levy rate, no change in valuation?
Right.
only
it's-
potential projects
Yes.
and applying the same levy rate.
Correct. So Mayor, it's very conservative. It's a very conservative growth projection.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that said, in answer to Randy's question, for example, if we didn't have the 1,150,000 budgeted, so we go to the bottom
The bottom
graph
table.
here.
Yep.
And let's say we end with either 23 million or 32 million. If we ended that, well, that's the dollars. But regarding the valuation with the bill, Rick, is it 80% that comes in right now? So it is only 80% of that, the taxing capability is what would roll back over to the city. It would not be 100%. And then does the same 90% cap apply for you, and you applied that
Yes.
to your projections?
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And to Victor's point too, and for everyone here, we can only work on areas within the urban renewal plan area. And Cliff had mentioned dollars that were available for certain items. There's not money being set aside someplace. It's yet to be collected revenue. So it's not like there's a pot of money sitting there. We're still working off of the yearly increments that come in.
That's correct. Thank you, Commissioner Haverfield. All right. All right, so that is and then Tom is going to talk about the projects that we have in the urban renewal area for the city and then close to our geographic area.
Thank you, Council and NDC, for having us today. Appreciate it. So this is a workshop, so please ask any questions along the way that you have. I'm going to talk about infrastructure today, and some of our core values in public works are public safety, infrastructure improvements, and economic opportunity. So we work on projects like improving intersections to improve the safety, infrastructure, which we'll talk about today, which includes transportation and utilities. And whenever you do an improvement, either transportation or utilities, it gives an economic opportunity, like we've been talking about. So this is the agenda we're going to talk about, what we're currently doing for planning and design in the urban renewal area, some funding options, some planned work that we've already got going, and some options with the renewal funds. So let's talk about the downtown area first. So this, you can see on your screen here, there's a 9-block area of downtown that's highlighted, and we have 2 different projects going with 2 different consultants. One with Keller and Associates. Keller's here in the audience today. We appreciate you being here. And so they're looking at this area in blue, and this is a planning study. And we're looking at, well, we'll get into the details on the next slide. So that's the area they're looking at. And then Paragon, they're doing a partially funded by NDC, which Robin talked about, looking at pedestrian improvements and then also designing utilities and streetscapes within this 6-block area. So this is the Keller design here, and so so we're looking at this 3-block area. So we're looking at improvements in 3 different study areas. So looking at the first study area is near Front Street between 12th and 14th, and looking at parking and what options in that area. And then the next study area is between on First Street between 12th and 13th. And that's looking at what do we do with that block? Do we want to leave it a through road, or do we want to look at limiting parking some more, or do we want to do more bulb outs and restaurant parking, or just close that down completely? So Keller is looking at some options for all of us to consider there. And then the third study area is on 2nd and 3rd, and we're really looking at what to do with bike and pedestrians in that particular zone. So like I said, this is a little more detail about the Keller design. This was actually a Compass grant. We got $50,000 from Compass to look at this particular area. In the next steps, you can see we're going to have some stakeholder outreach in January and March. And then we'll have a public engagement meeting in March. And then our draft report will come April, June, and a city council workshop and finalized report. So this whole thing will be wrapped up this year and give us some options on what to consider. So Paragon's project, a little more detail on that. Again, this is the 6 blocks out of the 9 blocks. And we're looking at funding a design, so we'll have biddable plans and specs in order to finish out some of the streetscapes that are not done yet, and then also building utilities. So this will be completed in 2023, and it'll give us options on what we can fund starting in 24 and 25. This is just a summary I just went through, kind of showing you the 2 different planning and design that we're currently underway. So I also want to mention that we do, if you've heard of the ARPA funds, American Rescue Plan Act funds, we do have some funds that we dedicated towards water line replacement. And so the total amount that we've allocated for water line replacement for the entire city is $5 million. So some of that money definitely can be used downtown. There's going to be a little bit limited because not most of the utilities downtown are in the alleyways, and they're not on the streets themselves or under sidewalks. So, but I think we have a real good potential to do something on Wall Street and use some ARPA funds there to finish out what we haven't done on Wall Street, and that would be a good project that we could look at doing. And that's one of our recommendations that you'll see at the end is to finish out Wall Street. And then this map here shows you the age of the water lines. Wall Street does have one of the older lines in downtown, so that's a good one that does need to be replaced as well. So how much is this all going to cost? So to complete all 9 blocks, going through and completing all the streetscapes and sidewalks according to our plan, $23 million. So basically, if you take one block, it's about $2.5 million per block. So we need to talk about this. Maybe we do this when we talk about project priorities. Which block do you want to focus on first? Because we're not going to be able to do it all at once. And so we need to come through and determine which type of priorities we want. Okay, so I passed out a sheet so you can see this is pretty small on the screen, but you can see the projects that on the urban renewal area, which we have highlighted, and we put dots and lines for different various projects and a description. There's a description on the back of the page as well for projects near and inside the urban renewal area. Some of these are funded by city funds, impact fees, and we do have a lot of grants. We've been getting a lot of grants lately, which has been super helpful. So the sheet that you're looking at on your table there, it's all these planned projects, and then we put a yellow dot on the ones that are most recently funded. Like I said, we've been getting lots of pedestrian and bike and transportation grants. We're not really recommending to fund any of these projects. I just want to make you aware that what's happening in the urban renewal area. We've been pretty successful in finding funding for these types of projects. So we have a priority list of things that we'd like to fund with the remaining funds, and focus on downtown is what Public Works and Economic Development have talked about, because that's a grant funding source. We really don't have a place to go look for funds for downtown, so we think that's important. And the other, we've done a really good job of investing in utilities, which was talked about. We've pretty much built out all the utilities that we need to for new growth within the urban renewal. Just want to mention a couple other projects nearby that are related to downtown. So we did get a $5 million planning grant. So it's called the RAISE grant. And this is a big deal for Nampa. There's only a couple agencies in the state that received this grant. And we're super happy about this. So it's North Nampa, north of the railroad tracks. You can see the borders here, north side, and encompass 11th and Garrity. 11th Avenue is basically and Garrity and part of Franklin are the borders of the urban renewal area. So we don't really have any projects planned within that area with this RAISE grant. So again, our grant is covering a lot of the needs in this area. You can see we're doing some work along Indian Creek Trail, and also we're gonna build sidewalk improvements in North Nampa, and then there'll be a pedestrian railroad overpass along 14th Avenue to connect this area of town and downtown.
Tom, could I make a quick comment?
Yeah.
The grant doesn't pay for any of those improvements, is that correct? It pays
Right.
for the design.
This for the design.
Right, I
Yeah,
just want to
Mayor,
make that
yeah.
clear. We're not actually doing those improvements, we're designing for those, but then we would go after additional funding.
Right, so that'll be the next phase to apply for the actual construction, but history shows that once you get a planning grant, you're pretty likely to get the construction funds, so we're being optimistic.
Yeah, when do we anticipate the design to be done to where we could begin applying for grants?
Mark, do you want to answer that? Okay.
About 2
About 2
years?
years.
Okay, in about 2025? Great, thank you. Yes?
And the opportunity zone is in that area as well, is it not?
Partially, yes. Yes,
When
it
does
is.
that sunset? So
Pretty well past.
so someone can still apply for that opportunity as far as tax benefit? Okay.
Thank you.
Another option, which we've got on our list to fund, is this State Highway 45 reroute. We've talked about this for a number of years to try to get the sugar beet and trucks out of downtown and turn our library block back to something a little more downtown friendly. So we've gone through the preliminary environmental, and come up with several options. This is our preferred alternative, to take 12th Avenue and do a bypass over to 11th and turn 11th back to a two-way road under the railroad. And so not all of this, the actual bypass area is not within the urban renewal, but the urban renewal area does cover, let's see, so it's 2nd and 11th. So we'll need to do some work on that signal there. And so that could be something that NDC could help fund, is the improvements on that
Question.
signalization.
So maybe it's a Robin question. How far back on 11th does the urban renewal extend? Is it a half block each side of 11th Avenue North?
Do you know that?
I think it's one property deep on either side.
Pardon me?
I believe it's one property deep on either side of
So
11.
it's just the frontage lots then? But that's the full length of 11th Avenue, and then the extension on, what is that called, Franklin? That goes to the interstate. That's all within the urban renewal area.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Another potential option was mentioned about the North Nampa industrial area. So this is a graphic of that location. Oops, what happened? Might be missing some slides. So anyway, one of the projects that we're talking about was building a recycled pipeline up to the North Nampa industrial area using our Class A recycled water from our treatment plant. And so that could be, we could go along 10 lane and then still be within the urban renewal area and get up to north of Cherry and put in a recycled water tank and have that available for this industrial area. So that's another option to be considered for NDC funds. total cost of that's about $12 million to build that. Okay, so those are our projects.
So Tom, for the recycled water storage, would there be a grant opportunity? Because I think one thing, I think it's important, and I think the city council knows this, I don't know if NDC does, but we really try to go after grants. And so if we can leverage the dollars with match, for example, if it's within the NDC area, right, if we could go after a grant for that, I don't know if there's a grant opportunity there. We've already received one grant for recycled water, but.
Yeah, Mark Stoyer and his team have been actively working on grants. It's possible, and yeah, that is an option for sure, to go after a grant, and that would be a lot of these grants are 50 or 25% match, so you could take that $12 million and leverage that with some funds from the city or NDC partnership and that helps out a lot when you're writing grants, to have multiple agencies bringing in funds and partnering. So if we have a city and NDC coming in saying, yes, we both want to put in funds, that really helps out our grant applications.
Mayor?
Thank you.
Tom,
Yes.
before you step down, there's projected years listed on this map. Are those projected years that are taken into consideration ITD's involvement? Because some of these projects could. Or are these your projections as far as when we'd be able to maybe start those projects?
Well, they're both NAMPA, and Crystal's here, so she helped put together the map, and she's pretty aware of the ITD program and the year, so yeah, she coordinated with the state on when things were gonna happen.
Okay, so these are state-driven dates or years? Okay.
And are they projects that are currently funded? I'm guessing they're not all funded yet. Are
The
they?
one in front of you are projects that we have funding identified for. The yellow
Oh,
dots
sorry.
are.
We should have you get on the mic, sorry.
Oh, there, they've got the dice. Give them a little dice.
Thank you, Mark.
Can we just talk at it?
Then you throw it.
Yes, so the projects do take into consideration both the ITD tip and our plans for the city. And then the graphic in front of you shows projects just that we have planned and identified funding for. Anything that shows yellow is pending, so those are some of the grants that we've applied for, but we have not heard back yet.
Thank you
Thanks.
so much.
Mayor Kling, I have a question, but I think it's for Robin Tom, or Cliff. So when the city of Nampa partners with NDC, what is the return of the investment for the city of Nampa? Because I understand if it's in urban renewal district, those taxes go directly to the NDC, and the city has no part of receiving part of those taxes. Is that going on, or do we just give and nothing in return? I don't know the answer to that.
I'd be happy to give some answer,
Okay.
but Cliff, there is a great return because all of that comes back into the city. And now that we're really in close proximity, which is really the reason we're having this joint discussion, is because, for example, on a grant opportunity, if the city partnered and, right, NDC partnered, and yes, you would have a company probably locating in the urban renewal district, and yes, for the first, let's say 5 years, that money's going there, or 7 years, right? Eventually, that's coming into the city. So all of that comes over, except for the current legislation that limits it to 80%. But other than that, it is a great benefit to the city because it's, and so Cliff and Robin, I'm sorry I jumped in, would you add to that?
Mayor, I couldn't say it any better.
Well, that's the part that I was concerned about, is because at what percent do we receive presently? Because I don't recall ever receiving anything from NDC right now, because they're having sunset. Okay, I get that now.
But it does provide, like, in the industrial area, and for example, Stowe and some of the other businesses that are looking at coming are bringing good jobs to our area. Now, obviously, that's growth, right? You need housing and et cetera. The whole model has shifted, I have to say, even since I took office, Because really, to get taxes lowered, you need good development, right? But unfortunately, we've got legislation that has shifted the tax burden to the residents. So the benefit of the growth is not as great as it would otherwise be. But we're bringing in jobs and good paying jobs, which one thing that we have done is we've reduced the level of poverty in our community. I don't remember that percentage, but it has changed and it's all for the positive because we have better paying jobs. And so there's a whole lot of benefit. It's like that we could actually create a whole workshop on that, the benefits. Yeah.
Well, I was concerned about that, and I've been thinking about that quite a bit, because we're handing out funding and we're partnering with NDC, and I haven't seen any return on investment yet. So that's just what I'm thinking. I know it's gonna come down the road, but the percentage of us receiving actual tax dollars would be a lot less than what we initially think it will be.
Correct. I don't know, and that would be another piece of information to get. I don't know where the city has partnered very much with NDC. I think right now the city has benefited from NDC, but I don't know that the city has actually contributed into any projects with NDC up to now. We haven't that I'm aware
I
of.
don't see that either, but.
Yeah.
Mayor, if I may, and question probably for Robin and maybe even for legal for Bill. Talked to the mayor about this, in fact, yesterday. But just to give Darrell a 101 education piece here. Bonds are paid off 26 and 28, right? Sunset is not till 12/31/30. So before deciding on potential projects, if we decide not to spend any money after those bonds are paid off in 26 and 28, where does that money sit? Because legally, Bill, there's no disbursement to the districts. Can start until January of 31, is that correct?
You have the dice.
Or whoever can answer that question.
And I did ask Robin this, so I think they're prepared to answer.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah, if legal gives too long an answer, I'll go to Robin.
It feels like a parlor game where you get the ball. So, Commissioner / Councilman Bruner, so the NDC, like the city, has to pass a budget every year, and so the commissioners are an independent public body, so they get to decide what to do with the increment that comes in. But there are some contractual obligations that have to be met. So like for the Adler project, their increment that they pay to the county, by contract, NDC is obligated to pay their increment back to Adler. So their taxes that they pay to the county on their project will come back to them until that contractual obligation is met. The 208 project and the Karcher site similarly is a reimbursement project. They're obligated, NDC is obligated to make that payment back.
But there's a time limit when they have to accomplish, right?
Well, when, and it's in the memo that I gave you, when the revenue allocation area expires and those increments are no longer coming back to the agency, then at that point, the agency no longer has any increment to rebate to those taxpayers. Then at that point, there is no more money for the agency to send to them. So at that point, that contractual obligation goes away, if those reimbursements have not fully been rebated. But to your question of what happens to the funds, if NDC says, we're not gonna do any projects, then there is a provision in the law that talks about what has to be done with those funds. But I think you've got to look to what the plan calls for and what the obligation of the board is with regard to their duties under the law with regard to the plan. So they go back to the plan, what does the plan call for? What are their obligations, and go from there, and then each year they have to look at that.
So I guess my question is, that's not real clear to me. So what's the projected timelines for our commitments? How do they align to these bonds being paid off in 26 and 28?
So, Councilman Brunner, with Adler and District 208, with our current obligation, it's just as the increment comes in, and then written in the agreement is until we sunset.
So it all depends on what the increment amount is.
Correct.
And so we really cannot predetermine. a
We
timeline.
cannot determine what that amount would be.
So if those increments come in a stellar way, and say that we are taken care of prior to December 31 of 2030, what's the legal, where does that money go? And if we decide not to do any projects,
So,
where that money just sits and earns whatever interest or whatever, and then that money is paid off then in 2031 to the different districts at currently an 80% rate, which we hope will be changed.
correct.
Representative Cornelius, okay, and so, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess the challenge that I have a little bit is not knowing that timeline, and when those increments and those amounts will be paid off, is how big of projects we decide to plan on, how far out. And of course, the bottom line is from the council position, is we do not want the city to be dropped a bunch of needed expenditures after this does sunset. But bottom line, Bill, there's no choice as far as, even though if there's no projects, nothing's dispensed or whatever the case is, the sunset cannot be earlier than December 31 of 2030, is that correct?
Well, Commissioner, Councilor Brunner, I would say that at this point, I don't see a reason to sunset early.
Well, would you say you don't have a reason, can it be sunset early?
Well, I don't think you can sunset early because of the obligations to Adler. And then the question becomes, what do you do with the other TIF money besides the TIF that comes from those specific projects? And then really the policy decision for the commissioners, which is, do you use that other TIF for projects that builds additional TIF to come back to those taxing entities at the end of the life of that particular?
And I get, personally, that's what I'm saying, I'm trying to weigh that with the knowledge and the facts of whether, it's just like putting your money under the pillow and for a rainy day, or what's the best way? If everything's going down economically, then maybe in some cases that is, not rarely, but maybe it is. And just having that money set, and then the city and the other districts get that disbursement, even though it's maybe been sitting for 2 years, as an example, or doing growth type things that aren't going to cause the city to have a bunch of expenditures afterwards. So that's what I'm personally weighing. I'm not speaking for any other council person or any other commissioner at this point in time.
And that's the policy, and that's what the policymakers get to decide.
Yeah, and so I'm trying to make that decision easier than more difficult, and it sounds like it's still difficult, so, okay.
Robin, may I say something?
Yeah, yes.
There's a reason why most of us are here serving, right, for our city, our council, our commission. And one of the things, when the urban renewal started and things happened, there was some people that weren't very excited about what was going on. But I think it's totally shifted. And what we're doing now, we're offering a mechanical way, I don't know how else to say it, or something that we're going to give back to the city that's actually going to benefit the city. We have a tool that we're using to be able to give back to our city in a way that's monetary rather than creating debt, because every agreement that we make has a sunset timeline on it, or earlier. So our intention is never going to be to bring more debt to the city when we hand it off, and I just think that that needs to be said. So here we are trying to come up with projects, I think, that will benefit the overall city and our citizens that we serve.
Also, I want to say, correct me if I'm wrong, right now we get to use 100% of the funds. Later, we only get 80%. So I figure, why sit around with that 20% when it could be used towards something that can actually benefit the city in the long run? And we don't see it right away, but it will come. So, thank you.
Thank you for those comments. They're great comments. And that's a really important thing to remember at the 80% when it comes in, is that our opportunity is somewhat reduced, right, at the sunset, because you don't have the same capabilities. So,
I think too, when you look back at what Cliff presented, you can see that in past urban renewal districts. You see what the base was and then what came in 10 years later. That is what will happen to this district as well. So I'm going to talk about projects for this that are specific for the Nampa Development Corporation, as well as projects that will be in tandem with Public Works. These are projects that are being considered or will be considered for NDC to support and fund and look at completing. One of the objectives, major goals of the plan is the encouragement of funding of public arts programs. And so we're doing that with the sculpture, but one other suggestion, and we've seen this around Meridian and Boise, are the installation of traffic box art. So we can do that quite simply. We are easily able to replicate this in Nampa. And the cost of this would be approximately $50,000 to do the traffic box art and then do the wraps on these. And we have a great program in Meridian that we can easily mimic and do. The next project to be considered is our Wall Street beautification. As you can see from that picture, that's not very beautiful. It needs some help. And so we've been working quite a bit over the last several months to look at what it would take to put in trash compactors, a trash compactor in the back of, in the parking lot, the Stampede parking lot, and then remove those dumpsters as you see it, and then that reduces the trash that, I don't know how much you guys walk on Wall Street, but I do quite a bit because I am downtown quite a bit. It's not very clean. And so it's not very fun to be in. And so the idea was to clean this area up and bury some of the power lines and then install that trash compactor for the use of the businesses that are located around there. We looked at a downtown parking audit management program. As you know, parking is a hot topic literally everywhere you can go. People are going to have lots of opinions about parking, and especially in our downtown. We have lots of people who call about it, have questions about it. So this would be looking at auditing the parking garage as well as our parking in the downtown. And the estimated cost for this, we just got a bid in this morning, so it was much lower, which is great. It came in at $66,000 for a parking management plan. Nampa does not have wayfinding. Many communities that you go to will have wayfinding signage to show you where you're going, where you can be. They give historical documentation of the town you're located in, adding to the amenities in a downtown and also around the city. So there's examples you can see on this slide of what wayfinding signs can look like and direct people and help people get through the town. So this would be a design plan that the cost of that came in much lower as well. So that one was about $38,000. Yeah, $38,000. And then this is a property that Nampa Development Corporation currently owns. We did a land swap with the city in, I think, 2018 or 2019 to get this property that is across from the library We had an amazing project, apartment project that was looking at going there, and unfortunately with the increase in interest rates, they just could not make the project work and make it profitable. So NDC, the Nampa Development Corporation, has an opportunity to be able to put this piece of property out for RFP again. There is an opportunity to do more risk mitigation for a developer. We could fund the geotech, the phase 1 environmentals, we can bury power lines, and we could also do demo, cover those costs to make that property more attractive for developers to come in and redevelop. Looking at putting in a multi-use building, retail on the bottom and then housing on top.
Robin, could I make a comment?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, this may be misplaced, and I don't mean to offend anyone, but I feel strongly that whatever we develop there needs parking included. I heard a lot of comments about real concerns about the parking problem if we start using the library as parking for this project. I don't think that's a good business plan.
Okay.
It's very concerning long-term. We need the parking garage, and when we get to busy, we want to have parking available. That would push us into building another parking garage, which we maybe need one, a few blocks away. However, in this property, parking needs to be included in it. And you see that in most developments, the parking's there, because the parking the sprawl onto the streets and some of the problems that it could create could be problematic. So I would ask NDC to please take that into consideration as you look to develop it in the future, is to put parking in.
So when we look at, thank you, Mayor. When we look at things that can be done for the Nampa Development Corporation can influence in the downtown, one of the things that can be done is land acquisition. There are a couple of properties that are vacant that NDC can consider for purchase, and then redevelopment. And then there are properties that we can purchase that to redevelop them and make those profitable and look nice again. And so that's an option for NDC to consider as well.
So Robin, is it just land acquisition? I think what it says is land acquisition, but it can be buildings.
Yes.
Okay, I just wanted to, I know
We
you
can
said that,
purchase
but I want.
buildings and properties and redevelop those.
Mayor, we just can't build buildings anymore, like the library.
Right,
That's what's been taken off the table by the legislature.
which is understandable. We had state laws created because of things that we did.
So Mayor and Randy, so you can't build buildings, but can you renovate existing
I
buildings?
believe so.
Yes, we
Okay.
can redevelop those and
And
But
I'm sure there's restrictions on the amount of renovation. Like you can't scrape the 2 top floors of a building and build something nicer, or can you?
so we can pay for the redevelopment. So just like we're doing, we could put it out for an RFP for a developer to meet how we would like to have a property redeveloped.
So you can, it's pretty extensive. What you're thinking is what I'm hearing is that you can, as far as renovation, you can pretty much redo the whole interior or whatever the case is, and redo the outside, and so it's not
Yes.
like a historical preservation building.
It
You can
isn't,
do much more.
right.
Okay.
Or we could raise a building if we had to. Is
You
that
can,
correct?
you can raise it and just use it, but you can't build, so
correct?
is it just?
Well, but it could be ready for redevelopment.
Yes.
Right, in creating a
for somebody-
partnership for someone to
For a
come
private
in,
developer to come in and.
to
do
come
that.
in,
Yes.
right,
Okay.
right. But we could
Again-
actually purchase, that would be a good thing to do.
And that, again, it
Possibly.
would be TIF financing that would, so it's using their dollars to do the work and then reimbursing them.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So this goes back to what are things that NDC can do to help the downtown. So one of those things is in communities around us, we have our sidewalk incentive program that we've done in Nampa, but there are more incentive programs that we can do with the Nampa Development Corporation funds. We can do signage programs, we can do awning programs, we can do demolition incentives, we can pay for the upgrades of the streetscape and the trees, and we can do art and mural incentives. So there's much more that we can do for our our downtown to incentivize businesses to locate and also to redevelop in the downtown. We've talked about this one quite a bit, but this is the Franklin Interchange beautification. This is part of a project that was in the original plan. This is this is just an example of a beautification of a interchange in Las Vegas. I don't think we would do this one in Nampa, but it's just an example of how it can be done.
The goat standing.
So appropriate for Las Vegas, maybe not Nampa. But this is a beautification that can be done to landscape that interchange and make that look a lot nicer, just like Councilman Rodriguez said. Our interchanges need some help. And then also a project that was listed in the 2006 plan is the Franklin Boulevard right-of-way improvements. And this is getting the sidewalks going up and having the streetscape in that from 11th to I-84. And that would be in conjunction with Public Works as well. So that would be, it's a larger project. Obviously, you're going quite a ways. I don't remember the length. Crystal, you remember the length, how far that was? Yeah.
Robin, can I ask a question about that Franklin Boulevard? So there's quite a few empty lots there. And so when someone comes in, have you done the research on who owns those and what the plan is for some of those? Because would some of the sidewalk improvements be done with the improvement of the property when someone came in? Or
I might defer
not?
to Crystal on that one.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm gonna hold the cube again. So the short answer is yes, we could implement some sidewalk improvements. However, in this area, our pinch points are really the bridges. Currently, they don't have enough span to facilitate pedestrian facilities on either side. So I would say the heavy hit of these would be trying to get the pedestrians across the bridge safely.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So on your map that we provided, there should be a dot on there on this particular area. We do have a freight grant to realign Franklin and Industrial and Third right by the interchange. It's very tight in there and there's lots of crashes because of conflicting movement. So any work, we could partner on that project as well to help build sidewalks.
So when is that, you have the grant right now?
And we do have that grant, yes.
How much is that and when is it anticipated?
That one, I want to say was about $8 million. And we're still in design, so I'd say, best case, probably 4 to 5 years before we can build something.
Okay, but is the grant just for the design or is the grant for the work?
That's for the work
It's
and
for
design.
the work?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's a great opportunity then for a partnership, where the city has the grant, the work to be done, and then, yeah, that's great. Thank you.
All right. We're almost there. We've talked about this project. Tom outlined this one pretty well, but this is the design work to be able to redo the sidewalks. So Nampa has already, or the Development Corporation has already agreed to fund $150,000 of it. CDBG was going to fund a portion of this design work, but going back and working with HUD, there's a regulation of not funding master plans. And so we're gonna we'll probably come back to NDC to see how they would like to participate to help fund the remaining portion of the design work that needs to be done.
I'm sorry. Is it possible to reduce the scope and to, rather than having the larger scope, but possibly reduce the scope and get part of it done and then expand and fund the next piece? Or does that all need to be done at the same time?
So I'll let Daniel.
So the scope of this project is to do preliminary design, have it ready so that we can parcel out different phases of it. We can prioritize, if we have an area we want to prioritize, we can certainly do that and pull pieces out. I wouldn't say that we want to reduce the scope to remove items, but we could remove area to bring the cost down.
Right, and that would be what I would be suggesting. For example, if we don't have the funding to do the full plan, but if we could get a certain area, say, okay, let's prioritize this area, knowing that we would then move to the broader area when we have the funding available. if we prioritize certain blocks that we say we need this designed, and that way we know that we can at least get that done.
Yep.
Okay, so we could do that.
Yeah, we could, we can definitely consider that. Then finally is the downtown streetscape installation. So from that design work we just talked about, this would be the actual construction that Tom went over as well, for approximately $23 million for that full area. And then we would prioritize the construction and do this in phases. These are our project recommendations. You can see the source of the proposal. Several are just NDC projects that would be not with Public Works. And then there are the larger projects, obviously, that are with Public Works that could be considered for funding for NDC, as well as working with Public Works. So with that, that is our current scenario, and the main reason for our meeting today was to, with our Nampa Development Corporation, as the district sunsets, knowing that we have a finite amount of time coming, what we would like to have done, and then also knowing what the city is doing, so we have some great communication about what the two are doing, and being able to make a good informed decision for the Nampa Development Corporation in our upcoming meetings. So with that, that's this portion. Do we want to open it up to discussion, Mayor? I would. Okay.
Robin, thank you. I think now is a good time to pause and have discussion about, really, I so appreciate having the history. I don't know if everybody had the history, so I think it's important to come from a foundation and know where we came from. But then as we've talked about some proposed projects and philosophically, how do you move forward? I would love to hear input from this group before we move to the next piece, because that's a totally different subject. And we are going to stop at 8:45, so we've got about 20 minutes. And so I'm just curious what the comments are. I'd like to hear them. Wendy, do you have any initial comments or?
Well, I do. One of the things, we are charged with is making improvements, but when we can come up with all these great ideas, but if we don't know what the council or what the city's looking at, it's hard for us to make informed decisions. And so we really want to get the input. What's on your next checkoff list as a mayor or as a council? What is it that we can help provide to further the efforts of the city? I mean, that's really what we want to do, is we want to make sure that what we're doing is benefiting the whole. And that's
Thank you.
really the bottom line.
Thank you for
And
that.
Mayor, I'm council, and I know Randy's been on council for a long, long time, and I have been on it a long time too. But to me, the professionals are the ones that do this day in and day out. Mayor, that's you currently. It's also the Tom Points and our economic folks. So I personally would like to be for what I call, even though been a long time, a rookie, and not doing, that's not my full-time job. I'd like to hear from what you think is best for the citizens in the city of Nampa, for not only when you're here, but even the long time when you're gone. And so I guess I think as far as at least a few minutes spent on that before somebody like me starts inputting. Anyway, okay.
So, and I appreciate, I think, could
Muzzle
we
or mask?
go back in the slides a little bit? Because you had your project recommendations here for what, and so that might be a good start. And that's what I think we saw from staff that you would recommend. And Tom, are your recommendations in this list, or do we need to go back further? Far left,
So
okay.
you can see in the slide, the check marks. So my recommendation is to focus on the downtown. We have not done very much in the downtown. I would love to see some effort in that land acquisition redevelopment. I'd love to see us provide some more incentives to be able to get our downtown move forward in another step. We've done some great work ever since I came here in 2018, and it is much different even in that short amount of time. So I think we have a lot of work we can do in our downtown. And then for me, the sidewalks the streetscape improvement is very important. I think it's really important to be inclusive of all our citizens, and it is very difficult for some citizens to get around downtown. And then having those amenities bring more value to our downtown. So when we're looking at getting businesses downtown, those are things that I think are important. I also think it's important to have one of our interchanges look good. Have it have that landscaping, be able to bring people into our downtown. That has been a struggle for us. And I look all around and I travel all around, and that's an area that we can improve in. And then our Wall Street beautification is in our downtown, but it is a project that we've worked hard on. I think that it would add a lot to it. We can add murals to the sides of the buildings in that Wall Street area and make that a place that is really nice to be and clean that up. So I think for me, there's lots of things that we can look at funding and need attention, but downtown would be my priority.
So if you start tomorrow, what would you do? What's the first project?
I would start with that downtown, or the Wall Street beautification.
Wall Street.
Yep.
Yes.
I know Nathan is here, and I've been talking to Nathan on just very briefly, but he's got an idea about downtown that I think you did a traffic thing too, didn't you, Nathan? And one of these days, I want to hear what he has to say about that. And I don't know if this is a good time now or not. I mean,
Well, we have limited time, but I really appreciate your work, Nathan, so just take a couple minutes.
I just wanted to hold the cube, actually. I was in Washington, D.C., and Mayor, I shared this with yourself, and I shared it. It was my daughter and my mother, 71. We were on those little rental scooters, and we realized that there was 4 lanes of traffic, and they took one of the lanes and just put little concrete dividers. And we were able to go around everywhere around Washington, D.C. And then I realized as I looked in downtown that between Les Schwab all the way to 16th, we have 3 lanes of road, and they're really fast 3 lanes of road, and hardly any of the development's happening along there. And so one of the ideas is, well, why don't we keep it 2 lanes? We have 2 lanes to the west of it, and make that a bike loop on both 2nd and 3rd, and it would be relatively it wouldn't be very expensive to build that.
Thank you. Thank you.
And we'll present some of that in our workshops.
Yeah.
Okay. We have a couple really good things going, and this is one of them. The work right now that Nathan, you're doing, through Keller and Associates and our downtown plan, and so I think those plans are really important. I agree on the Wall Street. I think that's a game changer. It is a little bit expensive, but that is, it's really, when you look at the investment, you're going to clean that area up. We need the trash compactor. I think that we can create, and the picture that you had there is a beautiful picture, and I think that's something we could accomplish. I agree also on the Franklin interchange beautification. As Councilman Rodriguez said, both Karcher and Franklin, we've got 3 different interchanges. Garrity is not in this group, but definitely need change because those are the entrances to our cities. So, and then with the grant that we have to actually address that Franklin and First, I think there's an opportunity for us to come in and join and do something there. So I think it's a really good one. Personally, if it were me, I would change the scope of the design for the downtown sidewalks. If we've only got 150,000, let's prioritize which sidewalks we want done first. And I think those sidewalks need to be done. And so if you could design the ones that you think are most important, and then let's fund that. If it's $2.5 million a block, let's set a plan and say, okay, in 5 years, which blocks could we possibly get done are the most important, right? So, or in 2 or 3 years, what's most important? I think the beautification and the change in our downtown is really important. So I would just, personally, I would reduce the scope of that study. I'd finish the Keller study. I would reduce this scope. Let's prioritize, and maybe you could help us prioritize which sidewalks. I don't mean to, sometimes we bite stuff off and it's so big we don't do anything. How about if we decide what we really want to get done and not make it so big and actually get it done? So let's design whatever we think are the most important block or 2 blocks and get it done.
Can I ask a question real quick? I
I know there's going to be some underground utility work. I think it's on First Street. And is that coming up next year?
Is that on the other side of 16th, the underground utility work that is being done at First Street? Is that on the east side of 16th, or is that on the west side of 16th?
It is.
And here's your block.
Sorry, we have underground utility work that's happening there on 16th with a water line that we're working on. It's right there at 16th. I think it lays farther to the east on the roadway.
It's, okay, so.
The other ones are in the alleyways. It's the alleyways, and that's the challenge.
Something we can work together on if it was going to be, I don't want to tear up and do and sidewalks and
Correct.
streetscapes twice.
And that's our goal, and that's part of the master planning that, or the design work that we were having Paragon do, was to look at that entire area, determine what utilities need done, do design work for those so that we can prioritize getting those utilities done either as we're doing the work or ahead of them as we cross those. The other discussion that we'd had with that design work was that if we have the entire area designed and can just pull out the pieces that are, that as we need, it doesn't matter which properties redevelop, we have the design ready for that area, so that where we don't necessarily, since we don't own those, we don't control which properties will redevelop when. Having the full design is we felt was a benefit, so that no matter what is redeveloped, we have the plan and can just say, okay, here's what's gonna be built right there.
And there's absolute wisdom in that. As I say, shorten it, I think, boy, if we could, it's really not that much more money. It is, but it isn't in the scope of it. And you're right, then you've got it and it's ready to go. So I do have one more thing, and that is, I think we should buy, I could be so blunt, there's a building downtown that's sitting vacant, that it would be really wise to try to buy that building and let's get it moving. Because we've got buildings that have been sitting there for a long time. And that, we have people come, I hear it all the time about Caldwell. The challenge is we don't own the buildings. And we have some absentee owners that really could care less, I think, about our downtown, that are sitting there vacant and have now for years. And if we could go in and at least buy one of those buildings and get that redevelopment going, it sounds silly, but it'd be nice if we could do it and then turn around and figure out what to do, but get something done. Yes.
Mayor, I think I agree with you completely. One of the mistakes I think we make is thinking of projects in a linear fashion. Like we have to get this done before we can do this, and then once that's done, then we can do this. There are a lot of small projects that we could kick off instantly and make a huge difference downtown. When we did the strategic planning sessions with the folks from downtown about what they would like to see, essentially the overriding theme was, right or wrong, let's just do something. And we have a source of funds here that it's really hard to duplicate, to do things that are enhancements that we probably won't have a chance to do again in the future. So things like streetscape is great, but we don't have to wait for all the sidewalks to be done before we buy all new street furniture. We could put the wayfinding stuff in place. We can build public art downtown. A lot of visible projects could happen, and we could get those going very quickly while we're planning for the big projects on the back end.
Thank you.
Mayor, from a risk management standpoint, I don't want to highlight too much the details, but historically we have had some quite a few trip and fall claims through our downtown sidewalks. And speaking with Daniel, he's going to have some interns do kind of an audit on the conditions. And historically, I know the city has grinded down and has tried to remediate a lot of those challenges, but there needs to be some sort of permanent, long-term fix eventually, so.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, so we've got about 10 minutes. Any other comments that want to come forward on this topic? So the question, so if there isn't right now, then the question was, do we go ahead and suggest what the, if there is, there may be no appetite for a future urban renewal district, but I think you guys have identified there could be a possible option on that as we look at these new areas that we're developing. And so, do you want to go there? And you may say something else,
I'm just going to
Robin.
back up just to our last topic. So timeline-wise, NDC, the commission at our next meeting, we'll discuss this further, make some next steps toward deciding what the will of the commission is on these projects and how we'd like to move forward. And then with that, I'll turn over to Tom to talk about a new area for urban renewal.
So we're talking about all the benefits of the urban renewal and what's been done over the years. So just looking forward, giving some ideas on what we could do for the next steps. And we have a real opportunity in North Nampa with some major highway work coming with the US 20 widening out on Shinden Boulevard and also State Highway 16. That is definitely going to be our new growth area. And that's an option. As you can see here, we can determine which exact area that would look like, but we see a lot of potential there. For growth, for new tax revenues. The connection to the Boise River is also very important, not only for the recreational part of it and the parks that can be built, but just access to water. And water is a big deal it's going to be a big deal coming up here in the next couple decades as the drains are starting to lose water and go down, which means that we're going to need to come up with sources for water. And so having a Boise River access will be really great because of the new storage that's being contemplated up by Anderson Ranch. So there's two, so besides just transportation itself doesn't bring growth. I mean, what really brings the growth is the availability to sewer, and more specifically sewer, because the sewer is a more expensive facility, and that's what needs to go in order for development to happen. So,
Mayor Tom, you know I'm a good interrupter, and I apologize.
Yeah, not a problem, Counselor.
But can somebody give me the definition initially of why urban renewal was put in place and has done so many wonderful things? What was the main objective for urban renewal? There's a word that I've heard over and over again, but maybe it's more extended than what I realize. What was the purpose of urban renewal being placed in municipalities and counties to utilize? And I'm sorry, but it's what,
yeah.
I'm not sure this is the definition, so that's why I'm asking. Maybe it is.
So, Commissioner, Councilman Bruner, urban renewal is a tool that exists in Idaho code and has for decades. And it's meant to do a number of things, and we talked a little bit about that before, and we can certainly dig into the plan and see a little bit more of why we did what we did. The elimination of blight.
Okay, that's the word I've always heard.
Is something that can be done. The provision of infrastructure.
Infrastructure in non-blighted areas?
Yeah, basically, the definition doesn't have to be urban decay, but the fact that an area will not develop without infrastructure is a competitive disadvantage, and that makes it eligible
And that's what I wanted to hear. So that's one of the objectives is for economic growth, if the infrastructure is not in place to make it really feasible for that growth to happen.
Correct.
So that is pretty much on the same level or equal to the blight, which I've heard for years. And of course, which I personally, I am in favor of. The north end of Napa is an example or whatever, where there is a blighted area to make that more economically incentivized for developers to come in. That would be my priority. I guess that's what is my question, though. This is not a blighted area. This is totally for infrastructure, for growth and development.
Right.
And so you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is that's in the definition.
Yes, that is eligible. And just before I turn it back to Tom, I would just draw your attention to the 10-mile interchange in Meridian. When they knew that the 10-mile interchange was coming, a special area plan was done, very much like what Rodney's team has worked on for Nampa. And then an urban renewal district was put in place to put the infrastructure in to fully take advantage of that and to make sure that they were able to get new development that took advantage of that new asset.
And my concern, I think where you know where I'm going is where we trump economic growth and development over areas of blight that really need help and improvement. So that is my concern that I have, if something like this trumps that, so, thanks. Thanks, sorry, Tom.
Thank you, Council. So I guess to summarize what was just said, and this is looking at this as an opportunity, doing nothing could be a lost opportunity, especially as other cities are growing into this area, and that's very important. There's even Idaho code changes being contemplated, which are impacting some of these. So being proactive is going to be pretty important in this area that we're talking about. So we do have sewer plan for 2 areas. So this is a Joplin sewer, takes us all the way up north of the US 20, and then all the way to the Boise River. So this would open up this whole zone for development. We're looking at putting this project on our impact fee list, which I'll get to in a second. And then this is the other project called the Purdom. So, and this is currently under design, and it extends the sewer down U-Stick and all the way down to State Highway 16. So we're currently designing this. It'll be done with design in a year, and we'll talk about options and how to fund that. Here's the cost estimates. So some pretty large numbers we're looking at between the two, 43 million. The good news is that Nampa was the first in Idaho to implement a utility impact fee. So we're gaining some funding in order to do this, which is great. But some of the timelines that we don't see it being able to do both of these with those impact fees. So one option would be to create an urban renewal district in that area and fund some of the utilities with those funds. So that's just up for discussion, for thoughts, and that's pretty much all that we had on that topic.
So Tom, who decides, is it council or NDC commissioners that decides on the urban renewal district to form a new one?
That I'm going to defer to Cliff on that one.
If you want to?
Go ahead.
Okay. So it would be the council that decides if there's a new revenue allocation area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I would add one thing. Nampa is at an advantage in that we already have the Urban Renewal Agency in place with NDC. State law has changed since we put ours in place. To start a new urban renewal agency requires a vote of the people now. We don't have to do that, and it's not required for a new urban renewal area or revenue allocation area. That's something that works its way through and is approved by City Council.
That's a good question, and thank you. Thank you for that answer. So we are out of time. I do apologize. We put a 15-minute meeting in with City Council And so I just want to say thank you. Thank you for coming together. Thank you to NDC. I really appreciate the collaboration. I would love to be meeting on a regular basis, just to talk about our move forward plans. But thank you all for participating. I just really, really appreciate our NDC team and your serious consideration as we move forward, right? You know what I love too, is that in the day and age that we're in, that it's difficult to have civil discourse. We have a group of people that don't always agree, but can have a conversation because you all have the best interest of our community in mind. And I love that because sometimes there's different paths on how to get there, but we have an amazing team of people that come together and talk through it and figure it out. And so I just want to say thank you, how much I appreciate the leadership and just the team of people that are here. So as we step into this next piece, I think it would be appropriate to stand for a motion to adjourn, for you to call for that, to adjourn the NDC meeting.
So moved.
Could I get a motion to adjourn our NDC? Randy made the motion. Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Now, you guys are welcome to sit here and listen. If you want to stay, you're welcome to stay, or you're welcome to get to visit or whatever as you go. For City Council, thank you. We're going to step into a quick discussion. Tom, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Sit here and listen.
So for City Council, I'm going to let Shar guide us in this next discussion piece, and it's really around how we manage some of our meetings and some changes in the agenda. So we'll maybe wait 1 second just to let people, maybe a minute.
I would just say thank you for Larry. He got up early this morning.
Good morning, Larry.
Good morning.
How are you? It's good to see you.
I'm glad I didn't have the opportunity to talk. I would have been a square peg in a round hole. The citizens, if I can have 1 second, while Cliff said that it isn't a taxing district and it doesn't cost the citizens money, it does. I am paying higher taxes because the money that's collected for the additional police, the additional fire, the additional everything stays within the district rather than coming back to me. This was a great sales presentation. If I have 10 minutes, I could go through what I see as inconsistencies where we're concerned about growth in the city and pushing development. And some of these things.
It's conflicting.
Take me out to lunch, Mayor.
Well, let's have a discussion. I think we should have that discussion. So thank you, Larry. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
And Mr. Harriman and Hubert would have been here, but the 9 o'clock was the.
Tax.
On the tax, so they said that was priority.
I'm really glad they're there. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, guys.
Hubert said he had to dust off a suit he hadn't worn for a year.
I was going to testify to that too this morning.
If there's anything I didn't offend, let me know. I'll be outside.
Larry,
Yeah, she wanted to know about mobility downtown. I'm the man.
exactly. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. Take care.
Hang on till 20:30.
Okay, so we have about 10 minutes, and Char's going to guide our discussion.
Madam Mayor, Council, Shar Tim, City Clerk. Some of these items that I'd like to briefly discuss has really been prompted of an upcoming meeting that we will be having next week. So some of this actually was also a recommendation by legal, and we just want to make sure that you were aware when you saw the agenda that there are going to be some changes on that. One of the first things was on our consent agenda. We do have a little paragraph that describes what the consent agenda is on the agenda, and in there, unbeknownst to most of us, there were 2 words that legal is recommending that we remove, and it is basically the sentence is, there will be no separate discussion on these items unless a council member or a citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda. Legal did recommend that we remove the words "or citizen," and it will just really be the council member that will be making that decision.
And with that, we've never had a Well, we haven't to date that I'm aware of. A citizen asked us, we've had one, okay, ask us to amend our agenda, but it is the role of council to approve the agenda and to amend the agenda. And so if a citizen has a request, they can certainly come forward and request it, and we can consider it on agenda. But the night of, a citizen can't remove something from the agenda. So like a citizen may want to remove a public hearing.
Yes.
Well, we can't do that. So anyway, so that, you'll see, that will be a change.
Another change that was recommended by legal just recently was currently in our consent agenda, we have as a subsection approval of the agenda. The recommendation was to pull that out of the consent agenda and actually make it as one of our bold sections. So it will be the adoption of the agenda. So when you look at the agenda, you will see roll call, proposed amendments, and then the adoption of agenda before we get into the consent agenda. So it's just going to be one more item, and it is going to be a motion that will be required.
So that motion will be, and all in favor, say aye. We have a lot of roll calls, so you'll see we're going to have two motions, and they're separate motions. So I'm going to ask for a motion to approve the agenda as it has been adopted, right? And that will be all in favor. A motion, a second, all in favor, say aye. Then approval of the consent agenda will be all in favor, say aye. It will no longer be a roll call because it doesn't need to be. So those, just that way it doesn't take too much time. These are kind of cleanup things, but we didn't want to surprise you all.
The other thing that you'll notice is that we are going to switch the order of public forum and proclamations. They're just basically going to switch, and that's really just, I guess you can explain a little bit more.
It's really
of what
easy,
your
it's
request-
flow. It just seems really awkward when we're going through and we do the public hearing and we have a bunch of people stand up and talk, and then we go to just a proclamation. And so we thought, let's get the proclamations out of the way, and then, because there's usually none or one, and sometimes there's someone there to speak, and then step into the public hearing side, where sometimes you have a lot, sometimes you have very few. But it's just switching those two. It isn't a big deal. We just felt like it flowed better in the meeting. So,
And then really the last item, I really would like to, first of all, discuss what we are putting into place, but then definitely get some feedback from council of how you'd like to handle it. And that's really regarding PowerPoint presentations by the public. One of the things that we did determine is that portable digital media, which is basically thumb drives, will be prohibited at this time due to security reasons, as we do not have a dedicated computer. And I just got a thumbs up by Mark. And really that this is something that is on my radar that will be definitely a separate discussion with IT to determine if we start getting more requests to have PowerPoint presentations conducted and something that council would like to do with the public, that we would look at perhaps having a dedicated computer, but then also setting up specific policies and procedures to ensure that we keep the integrity of our network in place. Okay.
Mayor?
So,
yes.
Sorry, I just wanted to make sure it's clear, the presenters or the applicants who come for public hearings, they can still send their PowerPoints to us in advance, and they can still do a PowerPoint presentation, correct?
yeah, Madam Mayor, Rodney, actually, my focus really is on the members of the public during public testimony.
Okay, thank you.
When we get, start looking at staff and PowerPoint presentations by staff or the applicant, that's something I would like to start discussing with you at some point. So it is standard practice to have videos. Almost every jurisdiction, municipality, that's what they do. And that's what mostly people will go to. But we still like to have the hard copy of the PowerPoints. And so that's where I'll be talking with Rodney and regarding staff and applicant of how we'd like to proceed. It's not right away, but it's something that's on my radar.
So Mayor
real quickly-
Sharp, go ahead.
Go ahead.
I just
Well-
I just wanted a clarification in a minute. Go ahead.
Okay, so on an applicant's presentation, what What we want them to do is to get it to you in advance, because what we're talking about is the security risk to our system if anybody comes up and wants to put in a flash drive into our system. Because that's how you could enter a ransomware or something into our system. So anyway, so that's the intent, but not to inhibit. So Councilman Bruner,
Okay,
then
so
Haverfield.
just question, and I'll use names, because Cheryl is the one who has asked. So if a citizen requests ahead of time and gives us the hard, okay, go ahead, Char.
Sorry.
No.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bruner, I didn't finish my
Okay.
little presentation.
Sorry.
Okay.
But no, that's okay. It's actually, this is something that we did discuss with the mayor and with legal just a couple days ago. And this actually is being prompted by someone who is requesting to do a PowerPoint presentation at next week's council meeting during public testimony. So one of the things that we have decided, and I did relay this to this member of the public, this person did come back, and this is why I do need some direction from council and mayor. So what we're letting people know is regarding PowerPoint presentations, the preference is really to provide it in advance so we can include it in the council packet. That way everyone can see what they're wanting to do. If they're unable to meet our deadline for that, they still can provide it to me by 3 p.m. on the Friday before council meeting, so I can email it to you as I'm currently doing for any public comments that are provided to me in writing. Then that document will then be added to the minutes. They also have the final option at that, and that would be at the meeting, where we would request that they provide 10 hard copies, so each of you would get your own copy, plus staff, plus myself, so I could add it to the end of the minutes. And during their public testimony, staff would be able to review it and be able to provide any input when you have that discussion. When I relayed this to the member of the audience, they came back and again asked, they want to do a PowerPoint. They want to conduct a PowerPoint presentation during the public testimony. And then they asked, well, if the staff can't conduct it for them, can a member of the audience do it for them? Which to me flagged that they would like to probably bring their own computer. So I really need to know if you would like to have members of the public conduct PowerPoint presentations. There are downsides to that. They would have to get a Teams link and then share their computer, so that will take some time. We would have to make sure with IT that they are broadcasting that PowerPoint presentation, because I won't accept a hard copy of that PowerPoint presentation after the fact, because I do not have the staffing resources to verify that what they're providing to me in hard copy is actually what they provided to you, because that is critical. I can't have someone give me something in a hard copy and turns out they have extra slides in there that they never provided to you during the meeting. So I guess I just need some direction on that.
So Mayor, my direction is no to what you said there, but my question is how is this communication regarding the process ahead of time to any citizen who maybe has not ever, been part of a public hearing or whatever? So where do they find this information, or how do we direct that to them so they know ahead of time what the policy is?
So, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Bruner, that is an excellent question. I literally got this inquiry about 2 days ago, but it looks like Rodney will be able to. But that's something I can also work with Rodney. If he has something I'm planning, it's something perhaps even the clerks can put something on our website as well.
And this,
Are we getting requests to do PowerPoints at P&Z meetings?
Yeah, the same people.
So it's the same way, so it almost, that direction needs to happen even before the P&Z
And it-
process, okay.
And it does, I mean, when we send out notices to everyone within 300 feet, when we put it in the newspaper, we have a statement that says you need to provide anything you would like in the staff report or in the packet going to P&Z or to City Council by Wednesday before the public hearing.
Okay, so that's in there, and I guess a little concern, I want citizens to do what they think is best, but I really don't want to encourage that everyone brings a PowerPoint. So, you know, there's a fine line there, I guess is what I'm saying, so as long as
And it takes
that's.
time to set up those PowerPoints. It actually takes time to hand out their packet. They should have the packet to us before the meeting and let us get it distributed. Because Cheryl typically is one that will say, and I really appreciate Cheryl, so nothing negative here, but my time doesn't start until, right? Until it's all ready to go. Well, if we did that times multiples, it can take a long time, and it has at times taken time because it just doesn't work right and whatever. So while we want public testimony, the intent was public testimony, not necessarily PowerPoint. So Councilman Haverfield, I think you had a comment.
So we're talking about the public. What about the applicant being able to control the PowerPoint?
I think the applicant does control the PowerPoint. Most
But-
of them do with
so-
their PowerPoint, but it's a 10-minute, well, actually code is 7 or 8.
Code says 7, actually.
Codes, yeah,
Yeah.
But we allow.
we allow
But-
10.
So it's,
But the chair can always adjust that.
okay. So the applicant comes forward, has their own laptop and hook in, and then do a Teams link, just like we did at the P&Z.
Yep.
So that won't change. I didn't get that clarity when I got the notice from Christie earlier this week. So I had asked if that's still the case, and it sounds like it is for the applicant, but not for the public.
Correct.
Okay.
And the other thing they could do is the applicant can send it to us in advance, which sounds like the direction we want to go. So we have a copy of it beforehand that we can distribute and keep on record. And then what we will do is we have a clicker up front, and we will have that available for the applicant to move through their slides.
So the choice is still there. I can provide a thumb drive, or I can provide my own
I
laptop
don't, I
to
don't
run the
think we're gonna
PowerPoint.
go with the
We
thumb
don't
drive
want a
anymore.
thumb drive.
Don't want a
thumb
thumb
drives.
drive. Okay, so sending the PowerPoint is electronically, and then you have control of the PowerPoint that way, because there's an animation as a part of it. Knowing when that is needed to be queued up,
So-
you wouldn't know. that's-
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Haverfield, this discussion is really focused on the public testimony.
not the
It
applicant.
is not on staff or applicant at this point.
And
I just
again,
wanna-
you would have control with the clicker we have at the podium there. So you would be able to know when you want to move to the next slide. That's always been available to everyone.
Okay, but I guess my question is, I can still hook up the laptop, run it myself,
Correct.
okay?
Okay, Doug?
Yeah, Mayor, question, maybe this is more IT related, but there are two aspects to this. One, consistency in presentation, and two, security. What's the difference, and maybe Mark can answer this, what's the difference between somebody sending us an email that we open in our system and somebody giving us a thumb drive that we put into our system?
I know.
It's a good question.
I'm
Okay,
gonna,
do
I'm
we
gonna,
have a
I'm gonna let
security
Mark, but I
scan
know.
Before we open the file.
We'll let
Go
Mark
for it,
answer
Tyler.
that. Mark, you are so good. Thank you for even grabbing a microphone. Got it.
In actuality, there is no difference between the two. Both of them are dangerous,
Right.
but hopefully our endpoint protection that's on our boxes will catch anything. Email, not only our endpoint, but also our exchange environment, checks all that before. So there's multiple checks via email, whereas there was only one
Okay.
check if it's a
Because
mark,
it seems to me if
USB.
somebody did have a malicious intent, and they wanted to sneak something by, it might be by emailing it to us through
And
a
if we don't know
supposed
about
secure
it, then
link.
a USB is a lot more dangerous than an email.
So having having someone present off their own laptop through Teams is more of a secure link then?
Very much. And also, by the way, we could actually have them come in with their own laptop, and we can plug them into the video piece and then display that through that. They would just need to have an HDMI connector on their laptop. And then nothing never touches our network.
Thank you.
That's a really good idea. It's a really good idea.
And we
Okay.
do have a laptop that I just haven't gotten totally configured, that after every meeting, we just reboot it, and it goes back to a fresh copy of whatever.
It's not connected in,
We can. That would be
we
a-
might need to have different connections. adapters
we
on
could
the
have a lot of
NVDH.
different,
You've got the adapters for the
yeah.
various, whatever
Yeah,
format,
so that
whether
they
it's a
bring
Mac
a
or a.
MacBook or whatever.
Madam Mayor, I think I'm receiving a little bit of different direction regarding public testimony. So do we want?
Thank you for bringing
PowerPoint?
us back, because we're
Okay.
talking more about the other side.
Okay,
I
that's-
think
That's okay.
we really, council, are we okay saying no PowerPoint in public testimony, that they are required to bring hard copies?
Or they
Or
could email it.
They can email
I-
it, but the problem is the size, because the size is limited, and sometimes these PowerPoints with a lot of pictures aren't going to email with, they're not going to come through our email system because of the size.
And then it would have to be hard copy. They'd have to provide the 10 hard copies.
So what's the thought?
Madam
We
Mayor.
don't vote here, but we just need yes.
My thoughts are if they want to, emailing it, like you said, it's a risk as well. Yeah, the other boards and commissions I sit on, they always email it, and the state controls the PowerPoint. But for public testimony, I think that they should be allowed to bring their own laptop with an HDMI connection. It's fairly simple. Scrap the email idea. And then but they need to understand that they need to be queued up and ready. Their time is starting when they're up there plugging in their laptop. So, because.
It's a total of 3 minutes. However they choose to use the 3 minutes is up to them. If 2
Yeah.
minutes is used trying to get their laptop hooked up, then
Yeah.
they only get 1 minute to speak.
If
Is
they're
that
not
harsh?
if they're not a tech savvy individual, that's not our fault.
And-
And they should be ready to go. Otherwise, they should just give us a paper packet.
And
It's
just,
simple.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Reynolds, one thing I probably should have also added is this individual is also making it clear that they will be asking for people to defer their time to them because they know that they'll need more time.
Okay, could I, ask, is this a public hearing, or is this the 3 minute testimony? Because there is no deferral on a 3 minute testimony
this is
prior
a-
to the meeting.
This is a public hearing.
This is a public hearing,
Public testimony for a public hearing.
for public hearing, not our 3 minute.
No, not our public forum.
Okay.
Mayor, I'd
Councilwoman?
rather just streamline it, honestly, and not have people bring their own laptops and just have it emailed prior to. I don't want to discourage anybody from coming and speaking at a public hearing. I think people need the platform to be able to do that. But having a PowerPoint's kind of an extra add-in. You can still come and speak and not have extra things. So I think if they have it ahead of time, they send it to Shar or Nathan, and they get it in, and then we have a copy of it prior to. I like that so much better. It's cleaner, then staff can just control it, and then we don't have this just lollygagging while people are trying to plug stuff in and there's issues, and it just gets messy, and it's not, I don't like it. So I would so much rather just have it streamlined, honestly. And then if they don't get it in time, then they can still come and speak, or they can give us a hard copy if they want, but no PowerPoint.
And Mayor, and but my preference, I'm old school, but just as long as it's being communicated properly, is they get the hard copy to Shar ahead of time. And it's in our hands, so we can see it. So,
Who's
to me.
they? Are you saying we do the printing?
No, they.
They do.
They do the work.
They bring 10 copies,
Yeah,
as
we
she suggested.
give them the time, as we have accommodated, citizens in the past, and how they want to use that time is correct. But rather than fooling with laptops and everything else, just, let's have the hard copy before us, and as
So
long as they
if-
know ahead of time. That's it's old school, I realize, that's not technology.
Just to clarify, though, I think, they're welcome to come speak for 3 minutes. If they have a handout, they need to bring 10 copies. They need to have it to
Yeah.
us ahead of time, not stand there handing it out, because it's not in their best interest to waste their time. I will say Amy texted me and said that she would love to help create a website and a mailable document opportunity for citizen engagement of public hearings.
To educate how best to do that, okay?
Right, through the web possibly. So we'll figure that out, work with IT and figure out what we could create for that. But until that's created,
Like I
I'll
said,
let you
I may be
clarify.
the only old school person here, but to me, it just go back to the hard copies.
Just to address the dinosaur in the room.
Uh-huh.
Colored, it is nice to have visuals sometimes.
I'm a T-Rex, so, okay.
that is great.
And colored print can get really expensive. And if they have 10 copies, and let's say they have 10 things that they want to show us, I mean, that adds up really quickly. When they can do it for free on a PowerPoint, I think it's gonna discourage people from giving us print. And sometimes the visuals really are helpful, so I think we need the option, but I think it just makes sense to give it to us ahead of time.
I don't agree at all, sorry.
Okay, to which
I'm-
one?
I'm even older than.
Are you the T-Rex?
I'm the T-Rexer. I'm thinking if the community wants to come in and give a presentation, we should make it easy for them and accommodate for them to do that. And all this other stuff you guys were talking about, well and good. I like Dale's idea, tell you the truth.
Which was?
Which was bring your own computer and whatever. But if they want to set it up, okay, let them set it up. That's what we're here for. Sorry, that's my attitude.
Then you're not the T-Rex.
Okay.
So,
And then give them 3 minutes. Sorry, people, we're here.
Yeah. So, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Rodriguez, I understand that. It's just if we do it for one, we do it for all. So, when we have
Take a long time.
a very controversial item like we had and that one time, and I believe, I thought it was 19, Mayor's pretty sure it was like 27 people.
Yeah,
But if we had even half of those wanting to do PowerPoint, even at 3 minutes, that is long. And setting up a PowerPoint, you're easily adding, at least 2 more minutes. Because
So
you're
what?
not only having them set up, then you have to have them unplug. And if the person behind them wants to do a PowerPoint, then they have to wait to do that as well. So
Then
it's just
the way I
something to
look
be
at it, Mayor,
mindful of.
Then we wait.
Well, I tell you what, so let's,
Okay, so that.
our next item of
That's my idea.
discussion.
I'm
So-
not sure what you want me to do.
Let's,
I really
She needs an
need to
answer.
respond to this individual for Monday's meeting.
Sorry, it was our goal to make life difficult for you. so.
I can have a,
But I guess my question is there again, is you are the clerk. So what's in our bylaws or whatever the case is? Is this something that the council actually determines, or is this something the clerk of the municipality is allowed to determine?
so, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Brunner, you are correct. This is something I absolutely could make a recommendation to the mayor and make sure that she's comfortable with what I'm recommending, but I do like to get feedback from
No,
council.
and I appreciate that, but there again, as I said earlier in the discussion earlier, you're here all the time. You're dealing with this, the time and your work and so on. So as far as I'm concerned, you are hired. If we don't like you, then, the mayor can get rid of you, right?
I'm
But-
coming up
but-
to
but
my one-year anniversary.
I personally really like you, and I would just as soon, rather than the 5 of us currently, the one who's gone, making this decision, to me, you determine it. If we don't like it down the line, then we can change it and make suggestions. But to me, that's why you're getting the big bucks, right?
Madam Mayor, I concur with Darrell. There's 2 very wise people sitting there, and I think that that's a good idea.
Okay, and thank you to all of you. I really appreciate the feedback. I will be speaking with the mayor and also with Rodney. I want to make sure that we're doing exactly the same at PNC, so we do not confuse anyone when it comes to public testimony.
So in other words, you don't have to listen to dinosaurs anymore.
so we have one other item to talk about very quickly, and we're way past our time. One of the things I wanted to discuss was how long we let our meetings go. And so I have been aware that Boise actually ends their meeting at 10. One of the things that has happened in the past is that we've allowed a public hearing to go on and on and on and on. And then you've got a public hearing, either the next one or the one after that. They're not starting until late. And in some ways, it's very unfair because sometimes our rulings are different when it's really late. We'll maybe push the next one through. And also people that can't stay to testify. And so I know that Boise's made the decision they end at 10. And so, and I personally think that's a really wise idea. I don't recommend we go back to what we used to do, which a few of us were here. We had a number of meetings till 12:30 to 1:30, and we're having these discussions. And then people, like at 11 o'clock, their public hearing hasn't even started. So with that, though, like we have 3 public hearings this coming Monday night. We have 2 that could be long, I'm not sure. But do we say we're going to, you can handle it a couple of different ways. One thought I had was that if you look at the number of public hearings and you split it up, and say, okay, we've really allocated tonight an hour to an hour and a half for this public hearing, in order to respect the other public hearings this evening, that if there is more testimony and more discussion needed, that we're going to continue it to the next public hearing. So that it doesn't just go on and on, or, because otherwise you could say, we're going to end at 10, but then the third public hearing, all those people that came, it doesn't even get to be heard. And so, or we just continue going on until however late. Now, Rodney, I do appreciate the fact that when they're long hearings, you're really limiting them. You had planned 2, but we also have 2 others that we're combining into one, which is the irrigation rate increase. So, is there any thought from this body, any comments on it?
I like that idea.
Okay.
Yeah. You go to 10. And how do you control it? Well, that's the other part. I don't know.
No PowerPoints.
Is there any way to know kind of ahead of time which public hearings may be longer than others? Because maybe before we clump them together, rather than have a deadline of it cuts off at 10 p.m., it just feels like at that point, this is the people's work and we're just saying, we don't care, like our time's more important, is how that feels. So if there's a way for us to kind of design the meetings, I know the work has to get done, but to put certain ones together so that we know that we're not gonna run till 2 a.m., I mean, is there a way of kind of knowing?
Well, we haven't had as many. One thing that we did do is we started limiting the public hearings to 4, no more than 4 per night. And so that has reduced the time frame.
Yeah.
And then like this one where we went with 2, but we also had another one come in because you've got more than just planning and zoning. And because they are noticed well in advance, right? So it's difficult because if you've already noticed 2 for the next council meeting, and then you roll over one, you've added 3, right? So you've increased that, which can become a perpetual problem. Maybe we just stay where we are. But one thing I think I would encourage is, we are going to say, upcoming council meetings, when there is an applicant discussion, we're going to ask for no questions during the applicant's presentation. Let the applicant get all the way through. And then we can have questions. But sometimes we add to the length of the meeting. But one thing that's nice is that I really appreciate about this body is how much we care and we're trying diligently to make the right decision. And so that's important, right? Sometimes there needs to be discussion to make the wise, right decision, because some of these decisions are hard. So I don't know, it makes it difficult. I will say that one thing I shared with Randy was, it could be on a given occasion that if it's running really late, I'm going to excuse myself from the meeting. I'm going to have Randy take over and let him finish the meeting.
Oh, man, let's not do that.
I was going to tell you that there are other options too.
Yeah.
One is to put a mute button on the council conversations that the mayor can push after 35 seconds, or a shot clock. You know, with this.
You'd be in shock. You'd be in shock all the time.
I know. I said,
He did
especially for
say
me.
that. He did say that.
Right, so just if we do decide down the line to do a time format, and maybe this is totally unrealistic, is there anything on the fly that you can, let people know ahead of time? But, we have sometimes people like 30 people sign up on occasion, where the mayor always is so good about saying, hey, if you have a representative and or you can just stand and say, I agree. Is there a way of actually knowing how many people want to actually get up and speak ahead of time? Probably not, huh?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Brunner, we basically, right now, we're having them sign up at the meeting. They're also doing online, but most people won't do that. They'll just do it as they're coming.
I'm just saying we could determine a timeline if we knew how many actually were going to actually
Right,
physically
so
get up and speak.
Just one of the things that we are doing, the agenda management software, we are targeting that for the second meeting in March. And they will have the ability to sign up online. And we should be able to see how many people we believe they can do it on their phone, or they'll come in and they'll put it out, do it on a tablet. So we'll have an idea. The other thing that I have noticed in the past is if we announce it, like the mayor had stated, announce at the beginning of the meeting that, we are identifying a certain amount of time. When people know that if they don't get done in time, that this item may be continued to the next meeting, even though we would We would continue the public hearing, keep it open, but it would be continued. It's, many times that encourages people to speak faster.
Yeah.
And, or they'll just say, I agree with the other person. The other thing that we had been talking about is to not allow people to have extra time when they say that they're representing a group, because sometimes it's hard to identify if it's a true group or not.
And I guess if we could guesstimate to a certain extent, I personally, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. I just wondered how the public hearings are prioritized. Are they based on how they come in? Because they're noticed well in advance. But how do you prioritize those? Let's say we have 4.
They have been prioritized, and this is something Rodney and I have worked through we've arranged and rearranged. So the most recent was their order of when they came in. Because how do you determine who gets to sit there late? So we just said, okay, just to be fair, it's the order in which they came in. However, go ahead, Rodney.
So, I mean, the chair of the board can always rearrange. They can always make that determination.
Night of?
The night of. You can switch it. If there are reasons to switch it, you can do it that night.
Like you see how many signees and so on.
Mayor,
You could.
Well,
I have a question for you.
Okay.
let me finish real quick, Randy. I'm old and I might forget what I was thinking. The priority, given, I was wondering if that could, because I don't know how Boise City Council does it if they're ending at 10 o'clock. They just continue every hearing that's pushed, I assume.
So, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Reynolds. So Boise does it a little bit different than what we do. In fact, we do it a little bit different than most places in that we have a start time and then we have a start time for public hearings. Most places, they have a start time. That's it. They start, so we would start at 5:30 and we would just go through the agenda as it is done. Then when you get to public hearings, it's actually, usually it's not in the order that they're received. It's basically the order of complexity. We usually know by this time when they come to city council if it's going to be a lot of people in attendance, if it's going to be controversial, and we have a tendency to put the easier items first. That way we can get the people in and out, and we know that the longer items may go quite long. What Boise did is they started, now they do meet every week, but there were about 2 or 3 meetings in a row where we were ending about 11:30, 11:45, and that's when the mayor made the decision that, you know, right around 10, if we're not in deliberations on that last item, then we need to start considering just ending it. And she would give some leeway, but that's what was happening.
Just for, my train of thought was, just for an idea, and I don't know if it's feasible, I'm just throwing this out there. To say you have 4 public hearings, you know they're coming, and we did a lottery for who gets to go first. And then when 10 o'clock comes, everybody else knows they pushed because they drew the last straw, or the short straw. So, anyway, just an idea. Thank you.
Randy, then I have something. Randy, you're on since you're not as old as I am, I guess. Go ahead.
So Mayor, we have a sign-up sheet. As people come in, they can sign up to speak or not speak, either in favor or not in favor of. Another sheet that might say, I'm representing so many people, and then have they provide a list of who those people are. I mean, that might be something to think about. But is there any obligation for us to have to provide additional time for those that didn't sign up? Because you give that opportunity for folks. If we could eliminate that, then that kind of, because that action trumps everything else. I mean, we can say, well, we've got so many minutes allocated, but we're still allowing even more people to maybe reconsider and come back up that weren't going to speak.
I'll let Shar, she's the expert, answer that one.
Okay.
Sorry, Madam Mayor, Councilmember Haverfield, I would not recommend that.
To eliminate it?
To eliminate it. Allowing people to sign up in advance just gives them a security that they know that we know that they want to speak, but there are those that perhaps they just do not want to, or they came in late, because we do kind of cut it off at a certain time, and we don't have them sign up in advance anymore.
Okay, so it's a courtesy, it's not a requirement, that's what I'm hearing.
It's not well, I think in some ways it is in being fair. So, because I know we've had a number of people that missed signing up, they just missed it. They had intended to, but they just missed it, and then they would not get to testify. And I think we would run into a problem with people being very
I-
upset with us.
And it very well may be a requirement. If they're attending the public meeting, they do have
They
the.
still have the ability
The
to
ability
speak.
to speak. Mhm.
Okay, my question, whether it's legal or not. So is there any reason why we can just not put a maximum time on any public hearing? We realize some only take 10 minutes, but where people know coming in that they see the order, but whether it's 45 minutes or whatever the case is, and those who are not going to take long, they're not going to take up to their 45 minutes. Is there any reason why just not, and I think we could then pretty much control when we're going to, for sure, end the meeting. It's not going to go any later because we have 4 hearings and each of them have the same amount of allotted time, and they know that ahead of time. So if they want to, as an HOA or whatever, prioritize or whatever the case is, who speaks, that's their choice. But once that time is up, just like when we have 7 minutes or 10 minutes for the applicant or whatever, that time is being tracked and it's done.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Brunner, that's definitely an idea. It's just something, a little bit risky because even though we time the applicant, we don't time staff, we don't time
I think
your
we should time
questions.
staff.
But it's more of the questions.
Well, no, I'm just saying that they
I
know
did
how much
ask,
time to
though,
put their presentation
Sometimes when
in.
there's a lot of council questions, that can actually go into detail, but it's very important to have.
Yeah, I mean, and there again, as a chair or whatever, that can be, I mean, there's always exception to the rule that we need to hear more, but they know ahead of where they can plan.
I asked legal this question when we were on our planning call, actually, and yes, we can put a limit on it legally. However, you have to continue it. We would need to continue it because we can't. Correct, right. So the night of, we could say, you know what, tonight we've got 3 public hearings. We're not going to allow any one public hearing to go longer than 1 hour to allow everyone here to have the opportunity. But if this public hearing, for example, you could, what you want to do is put your long ones at the end. But let's say the first one has run over an hour so that you say, we're going to end this public hearing, we will continue it. And it could be, but it would have to be continued and keep it open.
I would be in favor of that, as long as they know ahead of time that that's their time limit and that there may be a chance of continuance if they go.
And if they wanted to stay, they could actually stay, because if we had time at the end, before the end of our meeting, to come back, but what it would do is it wouldn't push the last public hearing off. You just move it to the next, okay?
So Madam Mayor, Councilmember Brunner, no, I would.
Push it to the next.
Yes, because we would need to have a motion to continue it to a date specific. If the
Okay.
person said, hey, I can't do it that day.
Anyway, that's my vote.
That's what you would do,
Right.
okay.
And actually, we can do that at the
No vote,
beginning
but-
of the public hearing. Mayor can actually say that so that there's no confusion, and we can make that determination.
Okay.
Well, I was just gonna say would be kind of bad governance to say we're cutting off, we only have X amount of people for this public hearing. It makes more sense to say everybody has a right to speak, but we're gonna limit the amount of time in this public hearing and everyone just gets 1 minute instead of 3, or whatever that looks like, right? But that way, everybody has an opportunity and we're not telling people they can't speak, because takes away their right. Yeah. No, that's fine. Yeah, pushing it to the next hearing. But if it's something that we feel like we could probably still get done, it makes more sense to me to just limit the time. And then also, I would like to see if we can limit the time on people transferring their time to other people. How many times do we want to allow that to happen? Because we don't need to sit through a PowerPoint from somebody for 40 minutes when they should maybe just only have 3 minutes, maybe 6. Do we want to just keep letting them get time?
I think for me, I think that one of the perimeters, we've talked a little bit about this, and so remind me if I'm off on this. If the people are sitting in the room, then that's one thing. If they're sitting in the room and they say, my time is deferred, and they're actually sitting there, then you would allow them to defer because they're sitting there. But I don't think that you should ever allow, unless they're signed up and if they're not in the room, the question is, if somebody comes in and they say, I represent this group and I want 10 minutes, well, how do you know they represent that group? But if there's someone and they're actually, all those people are sitting in that room, and they say, I defer my time, because otherwise they would be up there, then I think that's very legitimate. If they're sitting there, if they've taken the time to come out and be in the room. I don't know, what do you think? It's just a thought, because if they're there, right, and they defer.
Right. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Changula, yes, and it's something that we can dive into a little bit more. We did have that happen at one point, a couple months ago, where someone said, oh, my husband was here, he signed up, but he's not here, so he's deferring his time to me, kind of thing. There's definitely some questions we would have to look at regarding if someone didn't sign up, they're sitting in the audience and they go, well, I wasn't going to speak, but now I'm going to say that my speaking time, I'm going to defer to someone. Do we want that person to come up and identify themselves and basically state, yes, I'm deferring my 3 minutes to that? That's definitely more discussion, but.
Well, then what do you do with it? And what I do know is that we're not ready to make a decision on this, because I think we need to consider it more. But you mentioned, the one time we reduced it to 2 minutes. People weren't too happy about that. The challenge is if you allow someone to take 5 minutes because they're taking time to hook up and get their stuff ready and everything, that's not fair to someone who we're limiting their time. Because you've just given one person way more time, and especially if they're on opposite sides of the vote, right? If someone is opposing and someone's for, but we're not giving them the same 5 minutes, we're limiting it to 2 minutes, then we've created some real inconsistency. So that's the challenge with that.
My opinion is, folks, I turned you guys off 10 minutes ago because we're limiting people. We shouldn't be doing that. We were elected to serve.
You're not, your mic's not on, sorry.
Oh.
I already said it.
I
So
know.
if you guys come up with a good solution, fine. I'm okay with that. But I remember that when we are here for business and to take care of the city, and the people are important to us. So that's where I'm at. And I think we just need to do what we got to do.
Mayor?
Yeah.
Is there anything on the form that they sign up that states if they're city residents or not city residents? Does that matter in
I
the
think-
deliberations?
Speak to that.
Thank you.
It can't matter.
Okay.
It can't be a determination that we make at all to decide whether to approve or deny a project at all. So they give their address and they give their name, but they cannot, we cannot ask them whether they are in the city or out of the city. It shouldn't matter in the decision.
So a couple of months ago, a lady came in and wanted to speak on behalf of 75, or whatever it was, and she's a county resident, and when asked, what's your interest in this? Well, I drive through Nampa. I mean, that wasn't, to me, doesn't rise to a standard that they should be able to have equal voice as to someone that actually lives within the city limits. So that's where my concern lies. When the commission or the council is getting this testimony from people that might even be from Miami, Florida, who knows? Does it have equal weight on the ones that are actual city residents?
So I've had a lot of conversations with our attorney about this. And what it comes down to is, does the facts that they are presenting lead you to a conclusion of law issue? Like if there's a finding of fact that says, oh, they brought something forward that should make you decide whether it should be approved or not based on the conclusions of law, then it doesn't matter where they're coming from. But what happens a lot of times is, just as you've described, somebody's not living nearby, they're out in the county, but the facts they are presenting are not really facts related to the conclusions of law. They just don't want growth to happen there.
Right.
Or, they've seen it as a ag land for a long time. They don't want to see that change. And so then they share that perspective. But that's not a fact that should go towards a conclusion of law and say, hey, this means we shouldn't approve this. It really should be based solely on the criteria listed in code.
It goes back to our initial conversation about PowerPoints, and I'm in my mind, I'm going to the staff report that the council receives,
and the time spent in that report before we actually come and sit, that we should be spending to make sure that we understand the topic and the metrics behind it. So when we do get testimony, it's weighted against what we've been given as far as your reports and such, so.
So Mayor, I know this is getting prolonged, but Councilman Rodriguez, I have a question for you. So you don't want to limit citizens, which I don't think any of us want to limit citizens, but does that mean then no 3 minutes, that we just, there's no, I mean, because we're talking about limiting the time of a council meeting, and I know I can only speak personally, after about 9:30, my mind is, I mean, I don't think we're being fair, I personally am not being fair to citizens because. But I'm saying, so I'm confronting you a little bit. Do you want to just do away with the 3 minutes and have unlimited time for any citizen to speak? Because we're limiting citizens by the 3 minutes.
I know, and I'm having trouble with that, but that's okay, because it's working right now. And so.
But I mean, I think it's totally fair to, as long as citizens know prior to, that this is how much time is going to be given to this public hearing, and if it's not done in that amount of time, then it's going to be continued to the next. I don't think that's limiting citizens as long as you let them know what the game plan is.
Well, and it's respecting the next public hearing.
And that's what
the
I'm
key,
saying.
Because we
yeah.
have not done justice to citizens that are sitting here at 10 and 11. So many have had to leave. We've canceled their voice because we have not
Yeah.
put a time frame on these early ones.
Can work both
So,
ways.
Correct.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, Darrell, if that works better, I'm okay with that.
Okay, well, your statement, though.
My statement is that we should not limit, but then again, we have, and I'm agreeing with that. I don't like it, but I'm agreeing with it. Okay. Because it's us that's making the.
Well, I think what the mayor's statement was, I totally agree with it. We are limiting citizens if we go so late where people start walking out and we do not hear their voice.
That's 22 situation.
Yeah, I understand, and it's a guessing game at times, but I think as long as I repeat for the 5th time, if they know ahead of time, then I think that they should understand that.
It's not a standard that we would impose this coming council meeting because it hasn't been noticed. But if it's something, and so I think this is a discussion that it would be good to continue to think on, and then maybe we notice that out of respect for other public hearings on the same night, to allow everyone opportunity to be present and be heard, that we're going to limit public the time for this item to a maximum of, depending on how many are on that night, we have to remember all the other public hearings, not just planning and zoning that get listed, to a maximum amount of X time, right? And if it goes longer than that, it will be continued to the next council meeting to allow for the continuation of the discussion. But that then respects those other public hearings so that they have time. I think we all agree, public testimony is very important, and we never want to inhibit the public. We want them to give public testimony, but we also want to be in a place that we're fair across all of them. And also, we can govern correctly and make wise decisions by treating them all the same. So at that, we are 40 minutes over, and I am sincerely apologize. Well,
That's the mute button.
yeah,
The
I
mute
may,
button.
yeah. So do you have the information you need, Shar? Kind of. I'm sorry.
Yes, I think I will be having a discussion with you and Rodney
Okay.
perhaps after this meeting.
Okay, that sounds good. Anything else that we need to cover? Thank
Yeah,
you,
really
guys.
fast, really super fast on that. I just want to say, I would like it to be uniform across the board, so groups don't get X amount of extra time. It's just a flat 3 minutes. So if you're representing 70 people, it's the same as if you're representing yourself. I think that's fair. I don't know, that's just my thought.
Sometimes it saves time, though, because if one person gets to represent the entire HOA and they don't all talk, but they get longer, so they get 5 minutes, but you don't have 10 more people talking for 3, that it saves a lot of time. But if they give us a list,
That's important. That way somebody then, and then at the end, when you say, is there anybody else, it can't be one of them because they've already given up their time.
correct. Good point. At the meeting. Okay. We need to stand, motion for adjournment.